Now, we'll adjust our piston. The piston has two possible points of adjustment. This end is only threaded 1/2 of an inch deep, and this end is threaded 3/4 of an inch deep. So let's just lock the end that's only threaded 1/2 of an inch deep, because we won't need much adjustment. And it's easier to lock it now than it is to try and lock both ends at the same time while maintaining your length of adjustment. So we'll just lock one end. And insert the pin. Push it all the way through. And our holes don't line up yet, so we're too short. And we have a bit of dirt still down in the bottom of that too. Back at it with the rag. Right, so at this point in the adjustment, I like to use a pin rather than trying to drive the spring pin in every time I want to check the adjustment. So I have a pin out of a phase 2 or a phase 1, and that's too short. When it's the right length, it'll hold it up about that high. So we'll just withdraw our pin and withdraw our piston and screw it out 2 turns and just finger tight the lock. Back in, check the adjustment again, still too short. Back out, screw it out 2 turns. And at this point you can see that the handle is being held up. So we're almost there. That's where we want to be. Now we can start backing the piston in just a little bit at a time. And finger tight the lock nut. And check the handle, and it's still a little too high. Turn the piston in, 1/4 turn. And we're still just a hair too high. Quarter turn and back in. And that is where you want your handle to be when the piston is properly adjusted, so that when you push it down it locks in place, but of its own weight it'll hold itself up about 1/4 of an inch. That's properly adjusted. So remove your temporary pin, and at this point, if you wanted to re-clean the tube, degrease with some alcohol and a cotton swab, and lightly re-blue all of the areas that you've done the sanding on, get everything all back to pretty again, this would be the time to do it. I'm not going to do that at this point in the operation because that's a whole other story. So now that we know where our piston adjustment is, we're just going to lock the lock nut. Both lock nuts are now locked, and we're going to take some of our synthetic PTFE grease before we install our O-ring, because we want to get grease down in the O-ring groove. Keep as much grease as you can off the face of the piston. And smear the excess into the joint area. And if you want to lubricate the tube a little bit, just put a fresh rag on your dowel stick, put a thin smear of grease on your rag, and roll it into the tube and back out again, and that will lubricate the inside of the tube. Lightly lubricate your O-ring before putting it on. Always lubricate your O-rings before putting them on. And it just snaps into place. Smear some of the exterior grease around it and slide it in. You would then drive your pin back into place. I'm going to put my phase 1 pin in. And what I like to do at this point, just to ensure that the piston has a really nice area to ride on, is apply a very, very thin coat of moly along the edges of the slot. Give that a try, and it should be smooth as glass. No grinding, no grabbing. You can hear the piston pumping very efficiently, and that's all there is to it. Here's an example of a piston that's got about 500 shots on it, and as you can see, the moly is still where we put it and smooth as glass. It gets better as you use them. That's it. Thank you very much, and happy air gunning.